The massive chamber of the Galactic Council buzzed with excitement. Hundreds of alien representatives from across the known universe sat in their designated pods, floating at different heights in the circular room. The central hologram showed a small fleet of ships, captured by their long-range sensors. Order! Order in the Council! High Counselor Dax's voice boomed through the chamber. His gray-skinned face appeared on multiple floating screens around the room. We have confirmed reports of a new spacefaring species in Sector 7, designation Earth. They call themselves humans. The excitement grew louder. A new species achieving faster-than-light travel was always big news. It meant new trade opportunities, new technologies to exchange, and new allies in the ever-expanding galaxy. Admiral Krell stepped forward, his massive frame casting a shadow over the hologram. As the Council's military advisor, his opinion carried significant weight. His species, the Kraxians, were known for their impressive size and even more impressive warships. I have analyzed their fleet capabilities, Krell announced, his deep voice rumbling through the chamber. He gestured at the hologram, zooming in on one of the human ships. Their largest vessel is... He paused, checking his datapad, barely the size of our standard Corvette-class ships. Laughter erupted across the chamber. Even High Counselor Dax couldn't hide his amusement. "Surely there must be some mistake," said Representative Yura, her crystalline form glittering as she spoke. "No spacefaring race uses ships that small. The power requirements alone." "There is no mistake," Krell interrupted. "Their entire fleet consists of these miniature vessels. Their largest ship measures only 300 standard units in length. For comparison, my personal transport ship is 500 units. More laughter filled the chamber. Some representatives were literally falling over in their pods with amusement. How do they even fit their engines in there? Someone shouted from the upper levels. Perhaps they're all very tiny themselves. Another voice called out, causing another wave of laughter. Admiral Krell raised his massive hand for silence. While this is certainly amusing, we must address the situation properly. These humans have achieved faster-than-light travel, which automatically qualifies them for first contact protocols. High Counselor Dax nodded, finally regaining his composure. "What do you suggest, Admiral?" Krell's mouth curved into what his species considered a smile. "I recommend we send the Third Fleet for the diplomatic mission. It's currently the closest to their sector, and," he paused meaningfully, "it would serve as a proper demonstration of galactic standards." The Third Fleet was known throughout the galaxy for its impressive dreadnoughts. Each ship was a city in space, hosting millions of crew members, and stretching for kilometers. They were symbols of power, progress, and technological advancement. "Isn't the Third Fleet a bit excessive for a diplomatic mission?" Representative Yura asked carefully. "Not at all," Krell replied smoothly. "These humans clearly need to understand their place in the galactic community. Showing them real ships will help them realize how primitive their technology is. They'll be more likely to accept our guidance." The council members nodded in agreement. It made sense. Show the newcomers what they could achieve under proper guidance, and they'd naturally accept their place in the hierarchy. "Very well," High Counselor Dax declared. "The Third Fleet will proceed to Earth for first contact. They will offer the humans our standard protectorate status. With proper supervision, perhaps they'll learn to build proper ships in a few centuries." As the council members filed out, still chuckling about the tiny human ships, Admiral Krell remained behind, studying the hologram. Something about these ships bothered him. Why would any species deliberately build them so small? It went against everything they knew about space warfare and travel. But he quickly dismissed his concerns. After all, what threat could such a tiny fleet pose to the mighty ships of the Galactic Council? The humans would see the Third Fleet, understand their own limitations, and gratefully accept their place as a protectorate species. How wrong they all were. The Council's laughter would soon turn to screams, and the galaxy would learn a harsh lesson about underestimating humanity. But for now, orders were sent, and the Third Fleet began its journey to Earth, its massive ships cutting through space like floating mountains. The first move in a game of cosmic chess had been made. The humans' response would change everything. Captain James Walker stood at the window of Earth Defense Command, watching the sunset over the Pacific Ocean. His reflection showed a man in his 40s, with steady eyes and graying temples. Behind him, the massive wall screen displayed something far less peaceful: the approaching alien fleet. "Sir, long-range scans are complete." Lieutenant Mike Peters looked up from his console, his face pale. "The smallest ship in their fleet is bigger than our largest carrier, and they're bringing 30 of them." Walker didn't turn from the window. "How many crew on each ship, based on their size?" "Conservative estimate, around 1 million per vessel, sir." Now Walker did turn, a slight smile on his face. "And how many on our ships, Lieutenant?" 200 on our largest vessels, sir. 50 on the standard ones." Peters paused, confused. "But, sir, that means they outnumber us thousands to one." Walker walked to the central holographic display, where the massive alien ships appeared as red dots moving steadily toward Earth. He pressed a button, and blue dots appeared, the much smaller Earth Defense Fleet. "Call the Defense Council," Walker ordered. "It's time for Operation Mosquito." 20 minutes later, the Defense Council chamber was filled with Earth's military leaders. General Roberts, a tall man with a permanent frown, spoke first. "Captain Walker, you can't be serious. Look at the size of those things. One shot from their weapons could vaporize our ships." Walker stepped into the center of the room. "That's assuming they can hit us." He activated his presentation. "Ladies and gentlemen, for 3 years, I've been developing a strategy for exactly this scenario. We built our ships small for a reason." The hologram showed a simulation of Earth's ships moving between the massive alien vessels. "Their ships are cities in space. Ours are fighter jets. They'll be expecting us to fight like them, to match big ships with big ships. But that's not humanity's way." He zoomed in on one of Earth's vessels. "Our ships are small because that's our advantage. We've installed experimental gravity drives that only work on smaller vessels. The power-to-mass ratio would tear a larger ship apart. These drives give us maneuverability that their big ships can't match." Admiral Kelly, an older woman with sharp eyes, leaned forward. "And our weapons." Walker's smile grew wider. "That's the best part. Remember the mining laser project that everyone said was too small to be useful?" He pulled up another diagram. "At close range, it can cut through any known material. But it only works on ships under a certain size. The power requirements make it impossible on larger vessels." "You planned this," General Roberts said slowly. "You knew we'd meet aliens with bigger ships. I knew that any spacefaring civilization would follow the logical path. Bigger ships, more crew, more power." Walker nodded. "But humans, we've always succeeded by finding a different way. During World War II, tiny PT boats harassed massive battleships. In ancient times, nomad archers on horseback defeated entire empires. We're good at being the small, fast, deadly ones." The room was silent as everyone processed this. Finally, Admiral Kelly spoke. "What exactly is Operation Mosquito, Captain?" Walker's expression turned serious. "We let them come. Let them think their size makes them invincible. Then we show them why mosquitoes are more feared than elephants in many parts of Earth." He looked around the room. "Our ships can move in ways they won't expect, hit them where they're vulnerable, and disappear before they can respond. We don't need to match their size. We just need to be too small and fast for them to handle." General Roberts stood up. "You're talking about using our entire fleet in a way no one has ever fought in space before." "Yes, sir." Walker straightened. "Because no one else would think to build ships this small. They'll expect us to be primitive, weak, easy to defeat. Instead, we'll be the deadliest thing they've ever encountered." The council members looked at each other. Finally, Admiral Kelly stood, all in favor of implementing Operation Mosquito. One by one, hands went up. They had a plan. Now they just had to wait for the aliens to arrive. In orbit, Earth's fleet began to move into position. The tiny ships, gleaming in the sunlight, looked like toys compared to what was coming. But appearances, as the aliens were about to learn, could be very deceiving. Commander Thex stood on the bridge of the Star Mountain, the flagship of the Third Fleet. His massive form towered over his crew as they approached the Sol system. The bridge itself was larger than most human buildings, with hundreds of crew members working at their stations. "Commander," his second-in-command reported, "we've detected their defense fleet, sending visual data to the main screen now." The massive display lit up, showing Earth's ships arranged in a defensive formation around their planet. The bridge crew fell silent for a moment. Then someone snickered. Within seconds, the entire bridge erupted in laughter. "Those can't be warships," one officer said between fits of laughter. "They must be escape pods." Thex himself couldn't hold back his amusement. The human vessels looked like toys compared to the Star Mountain. His ship's observation deck alone was longer than their largest vessel. "Send the scans to all ships," Thex ordered, still chuckling. "The crew could use some entertainment before we begin the diplomatic mission." Across the Third Fleet, 30 massive ships received the images. The response was universal, more laughter. Some crew members recorded the images to send to their families back home. Others made jokes about the tiny fleet and wondered if they'd accidentally discovered a race of space mice instead of humans. "Sir," his communications officer called out, trying to maintain professionalism despite her grin, "we're receiving a transmission from the human fleet." "Put it on screen," Thex said, straightening his uniform. "Let's see what these small ones have to say." Captain Walker's image appeared on the screen. The human looked almost comically small compared to Thex, but his expression was serious. "This is Captain James Walker of the Earth Defense Fleet. You have entered restricted space. State your intentions." More laughter erupted from the bridge crew. Thex raised his hand for silence, though he was still smiling. "Captain Walker, I am Commander Thex of the Galactic Council's Third Fleet. We come on a diplomatic mission to welcome humanity into the galactic community." Walker's expression didn't change. "Your fleet composition suggests more than diplomacy, Commander. Merely a demonstration of proper spacefaring vessels, Captain." Thex couldn't resist adding, "Perhaps after you join us as a protectorate, we can help you build real ships." The bridge crew barely contained their laughter. Some had to leave their stations to compose themselves. "We decline any protectorate status," Walker replied calmly. "We request that you withdraw your fleet." Thex's smile faded slightly. This wasn't going according to plan. These primitives were supposed to be impressed, even intimidated. "Captain Walker, look at your ships, then look at ours. Surely you understand that resistance would be—" He paused for effect, rather pointless. "This is your final warning, Commander," Walker said, still maddeningly calm. "Withdraw your fleet." Now Thex felt annoyed. How dare these primitives with their toy ships make demands? "You have 24 hours to reconsider your position, Captain. The Galactic Council's offer of protectorate status is generous. Don't force us to demonstrate why." He cut the transmission before Walker could respond. "Can you believe their arrogance?" he asked his bridge crew. "Warning us." "Sir," his tactical officer reported, still wiping tears of laughter from his eyes, "their ships are moving into some kind of attack formation." "Let them play their games," Thex said dismissively. "Don't even bother raising shields. We'll give them their 24 hours to come to their senses." The massive ships of the Third Fleet held their position at the edge of the solar system, their crews still sharing jokes about the tiny human vessels. Some officers started a betting pool on how quickly the humans would surrender once they realized how hopeless their situation was. No one noticed that the human ship's formation wasn't random at all. No one thought to analyze their movement patterns. And no one, especially not Commander Thex, considered that perhaps, just perhaps, being bigger wasn't always better. The 24-hour countdown had begun, But it wouldn't end the way the Third Fleet expected. While the alien fleet waited confidently at the edge of the solar system, the crew of Earth's flagship, Swift Strike, was busy preparing. Captain Walker walked through the ship's narrow corridors, ducking automatically under the low pipes and beams. Every inch of space had a purpose. There was no room for luxury on a human warship. Engineering report, Walker said into his communicator as he entered the bridge. The bridge itself was tiny compared to the alien ships, with just 5 crew members manning their stations in a space no bigger than a small apartment. All systems ready, Captain. Chief Engineer Tom Harris responded. The gravity drives are purring like kittens. Those big boys won't know what hit them. Walker smiled as he settled into his command chair. Unlike the ornate thrones the alien commanders sat in, his chair was simple and functional, with direct neural links to the ship's systems. Lieutenant Peters, show me what our scouts found. The main screen lit up with detailed scans of the alien vessels. Look at these gaps in their shield coverage, Peters said, highlighting several areas. They're tiny imperfections, wouldn't matter at all if you were trying to hit them with normal-sized weapons. But we're not normal-sized, are we? Walker's smile grew wider. How many weak points has the computer identified? 273 across their fleet, sir. Their ships are so big, they can't maintain perfect shield coverage. The energy requirements would be impossible. Peters shook his head in amazement. They never bothered fixing these small gaps because no one ever built ships small enough to exploit them. Walker stood and walked to the tactical display. Show me their weapon systems. New highlights appeared on the screen. Heavy plasma cannons, missile batteries, energy beams, all designed to target ships at least 5 times our size. Peters reported. Their tracking systems literally can't lock onto anything as small as our ships. It would be like trying to swat a fly with a telephone pole. And that's exactly why we built our ships this way. Walker turned to address his bridge crew. 3 years ago, when we first detected signals from alien civilizations, we learned something interesting. Every spacefaring race we observed built bigger and bigger ships. They all followed the same logic. Bigger ships mean more power, more weapons, more crew. He pointed to their own ship on the display. But humans, we looked at that and asked, what if we went the other way? What if we built ships so small and agile that the big ships couldn't effectively fight them? What if we took everything we learned from Earth's history about guerrilla warfare and applied it to space combat? The bridge crew nodded. They'd all been part of this project from the beginning, helping to design ships that broke every rule of conventional space warfare. Our ships have advantages they can't even imagine, Walker continued. Our gravity drives give us maneuverability that would tear their big ships apart. Our small size lets us slip through gaps in their defenses. Our weapons are designed for precision strikes at close range, something their big ships never prepared for because no one else would be crazy enough to get that close. Sir, the sensor officer called out, the alien crew is still laughing about our fleet. They're sharing videos across their ships, making jokes about us. Let them laugh, Walker said. History is full of armies that laughed right up until the moment they lost. The Mongols were just horsemen. The Greek triremes were too small to fight Persian ships. The British thought their massive ships could easily defeat small American privateers. He paused. Every time, the smaller force won because they fought differently. They fought smarter. He checked the countdown timer. 18 hours until the aliens' deadline. Begin final preparations. I want every ship to know exactly which weak points they're targeting. When we move fast, and we hit hard. They think size determines the outcome of space battles. Walker's expression hardened. Let's show them how wrong they are. Let's show them why humanity's tiny fleet is about to become their biggest nightmare. Around Earth, the small human ships continued their seemingly random movements, each one precisely calculating its attack vector. The aliens kept laughing, kept mocking, kept dismissing the threat. They wouldn't be laughing much longer. The 24-hour deadline wasn't over yet, But Commander Thex had already started drafting his victory speech. On the bridge of the Star Mountain, he watched Earth's tiny ships with amusement. Their constant movement reminded him of insects buzzing around a light. "Sir," his tactical officer called out suddenly, "the human ships are accelerating." Thex looked up lazily. "Are they finally running away?" "No, sir. They're heading straight for us." Before Thex could respond, chaos erupted across the bridge. Warning signals blared as the sensor officer shouted, "Multiple ships approaching at impossible speeds. Their acceleration is off the charts." "Impossible," Thex muttered, watching the display. The human ships moved like nothing he'd ever seen before, their paths twisting and turning in ways that should have torn any ship apart. "Raise shields." But it was too late. The first wave of human ships slipped through the gaps in their shield coverage. Gaps too small for any normal ship to exploit. Captain Walker's voice crackled across all channels. "Strike teams, execute attack pattern Delta. Remember your training. Hit hard, hit fast, and don't stop moving." The Swift Strike led the charge, its advanced gravity drive allowing it to perform maneuvers that defied conventional space combat tactics. It corkscrewed between two massive alien vessels, its mining laser slicing through their communication arrays with surgical precision. "Their weapons can't lock onto us," Lieutenant Peters reported from his station on the Swift Strike. "We're too small and too fast for their targeting systems." Across the battlefield, Earth's ships demonstrated why size wasn't everything. The human vessels darted between the massive alien ships like angry wasps, their precise weapons striking at vital systems. One human ship cut through an alien vessel's engines, while another disabled weapon systems, and a third targeted shield generators. On the Star Mountain's bridge, panic set in as reports flooded in. "Shield Generator 4 is down. We can't target them. They're too small for our weapons." Engineering reports critical damage to power systems. "We've lost contact with the Stellar Dawn and the Nova Queen." Commander Thex watched in horror as his mighty fleet was systematically dismantled by ships he'd been mocking just hours ago. The human vessels weren't just attacking. They were executing complex battle maneuvers that turned the alien size against them. "Launch fighters," Thex ordered desperately. But even this proved futile. The alien fighters, designed to combat ships of similar size, found themselves outmatched by human vessels that had been built specifically for this kind of combat. The human ships' gravity drives gave them maneuverability that made them almost impossible to hit. Captain Walker's voice came over the comm again, this time directed at his fleet. "Second wave, begin your attack runs. Target their primary power cores. Remember, in and out, don't give them time to adapt." The human ships moved in perfect coordination, as if they'd practiced this attack for years. Because they had. Each vessel knew its role, its targets, and its escape route. They struck like lightning, their small size allowing them to slip past the aliens' defenses and strike at critical systems. "Sir," Walker's tactical officer reported, "the alien fleet is in disarray. Their formation is breaking up." Walker nodded grimly. They built their ships to fight battles of brute force, but humanity. He watched as another alien vessel lost power, its lights flickering out. "We built our ships to fight smart." The battle continued, but its outcome was already clear. The mighty Third Fleet, pride of the Galactic Council, was being defeated by ships they had laughed at just hours ago. Their massive size, once a source of pride, had become their greatest weakness. As his ship executed another impossibly tight turn to avoid enemy fire, Walker thought about all the jokes and mockery they'd endured. "Send a message to all alien vessels," he ordered. "Tell them, size isn't everything. Signed, Humanity's Tiny Fleet." The message went out just as another alien dreadnought lost power, its massive form drifting helplessly in space, disabled by ships smaller than its own shuttlecraft. The laughter had stopped. The mockery was over. And the galaxy was about to learn a very important lesson about underestimating humanity. Commander Thex stood in his damaged bridge, watching in disbelief as his mighty fleet fell apart around him. Emergency lights cast an eerie red glow across the scene. Smoke rose from several damaged consoles, and the main display flickered constantly. "Status report," he demanded, his voice no longer carrying its usual confidence. 15 ships completely disabled, his tactical officer replied, voice shaking. 8 more have lost main power. The rest are reporting critical damage to vital systems. We can't even fight back effectively, sir. Our weapons weren't designed to target anything this small." On the main screen, another massive ship went dark as human vessels swarmed around it like angry bees. The tiny ships moved with impossible precision, darting through gaps in shields that shouldn't even exist, hitting weak points that no one had ever considered vulnerable. "Send the surrender signal," Thex ordered quietly. "Sir." His communications officer looked shocked. "Do it now, before we lose everyone." Thex's massive shoulders slumped. The mighty Third Fleet, defeated by ships we mistook for toys. The message went out across all channels. "To Earth Defense Fleet. The Third Fleet surrenders. Please cease attack." Aboard the Swift Strike, Captain Walker received the message with a grim satisfaction. "All ships, hold position but maintain combat readiness." This might be a trick. "Sir," Lieutenant Peters reported, "we're receiving damage reports from our fleet." He paused, checking the numbers twice. "Total casualties, 0. Some minor damage to 3 ships, but nothing serious. We're too small and fast for their weapons to hit effectively." Walker nodded. "Open a channel to Commander Thex." The alien commander's face appeared on screen, looking very different from their last conversation. The mockery was gone, replaced by a mixture of fear and bewilderment. "How?" Thex asked simply. "How did you do this?" "We studied history," Walker replied. "Throughout human history, smaller forces have defeated larger ones by fighting differently. We didn't try to match your size or power. We found your weaknesses and exploited them." "But the shield gaps, they're too small for any ship to pass through." "Too small for your ships," Walker corrected. "We built ours specifically to exploit those weaknesses. Our entire fleet was designed around the idea that bigger isn't always better." On the Star Mountain's bridge, Thex's crew listened in silence as Walker continued. "Your ships are impressive, Commander. They're technological marvels, but they're also predictable. You built them based on what you thought space warfare should be. Massive ships trading massive blows. We looked at space warfare and asked, what if we did something completely different?" The main screen showed the human ships still moving in their precise patterns around the disabled alien fleet. Even now, their formation was perfect, their movements coordinated with incredible precision. "Those gaps in your shields," Walker explained, "they're tiny flaws caused by power distribution over too large an area. Nobody ever worried about them, because no one ever built ships small enough to exploit them. Your weapons, they're designed to track large targets, not small, fast-moving ones. Your entire philosophy of space combat assumed that everyone would build bigger and bigger ships." Thex watched a replay of the battle on a secondary screen. Now that he knew what to look for, he could see the brilliant strategy behind every movement. The human ships hadn't been flying randomly. They'd been executing precisely planned attack runs, targeting specific vulnerabilities that no one had ever considered important before. "The Galactic Council," Thex began. "We'll need to reconsider many things," Walker finished, "starting with the assumption that size determines military power. We're not interested in being anyone's protectorate, Commander. We're interested in peaceful relations between equals." As the disabled Third Fleet drifted in space, surrounded by the tiny ships that had defeated it, Thex realized that everything they thought they knew about space warfare had just changed. The humans hadn't just won a battle, they'd revolutionized military doctrine, with ships smaller than a standard alien shuttle. The galaxy would never be the same, and it all started because they'd mocked the tiny fleet. The great chamber of the Galactic Council was silent. No one was laughing now. The massive screen showed footage from the battle, playing on repeat. Tiny human ships dancing between their massive vessels, striking with surgical precision, dismantling the mighty Third Fleet piece by piece. Admiral Krell stood before the council, his earlier arrogance replaced by humility. "The humans didn't just defeat our fleet," he reported. "They changed everything we thought we knew about space warfare. They'd proved that bigger isn't always better." High Counselor Dax leaned forward in his floating pod. "Explain how a fleet of miniature ships managed to defeat our most powerful battle group." "They built their entire fleet specifically to exploit weaknesses we never considered important," Krell explained. He gestured, and the display showed detailed scans of the human vessels. Their ships use advanced gravity drives that only work on small vessels. The power-to-mass ratio would tear larger ships apart. This gives them maneuverability we can't match. The council members watched as the recording showed a human ship performing impossible turns, slipping through shield gaps that had been considered too small to matter. "But surely our weapons," Representative Yura began. "Were useless," Krell finished. "Our targeting systems are designed for large vessels. Trying to hit their ships was like trying to shoot individual insects with artillery. And their weapons?" He shook his head in amazement. "Precise, short-range, and devastatingly effective. They turned our size against us." Another council member spoke up. "Surely we can adapt our defenses." "It's not that simple," Krell replied. "The shield gaps they exploited. They're caused by fundamental laws of physics. The bigger the shield, the more power it needs, and the more tiny imperfections appear. We can't eliminate them without completely redesigning our ships from scratch." The chamber erupted in concerned murmurs. High Counselor Dax raised his hand for silence. "What do the humans want?" "They've sent terms," Krell said, activating another display. "They want recognition as an independent spacefaring civilization. No protectorate status. They're willing to share their technology and join the council as equals." "Share their technology." Several council members perked up at this. "Yes," Krell nodded. Captain Walker explained that they don't want war. They just wanted to prove they deserved respect. And they've certainly done that. The display showed new images, the disabled Third Fleet being helped back to working order by the same tiny ships that had defeated it. Human engineers were already helping repair the damage they caused, showing a level of sophistication that put their earlier mockery to shame. "There's more," Krell continued. "The humans suggest we consider a new approach to fleet design. They propose combining our large ships with squadrons of their smaller vessels. The big ships provide power and resources, while the small ships protect them from similar attacks." High Counselor Dax looked thoughtful. "They defeated our strongest fleet in hours, and now they want to help us become stronger. They say that's what advanced civilizations should do. Learn from each other." Krell smiled slightly. "They've already shared preliminary designs for a new type of defensive screen that could protect our larger ships better. Their engineers developed it while repairing our fleet." The council chamber was quiet as everyone processed this. Finally, Representative Yura spoke. "Perhaps we were too quick to judge based on size alone. These humans, they think differently than us. That could be valuable." "Indeed," Dax agreed. "Call for a vote on accepting Earth as a full member of the Galactic Council." The vote was unanimous. The same council that had laughed at Earth's tiny ships now welcomed them as equals. As the session ended, Admiral Krell stayed behind, studying the battle footage again. "A remarkable species," he muttered to himself. "They didn't just win a battle, they revolutionized space warfare. And instead of using that advantage to conquer, they offer to help us improve." The footage showed the human ships one last time, their small size now a symbol not of weakness, but of innovation and adaptability. The galaxy had learned an important lesson. Never judge by size alone, and never ever underestimate humanity. In Earth orbit, Captain Walker received the news of the Council's vote with a small smile. The tiny fleet had done its job. Now it was time to help build a better galaxy, one where size didn't determine worth, and where innovation and cooperation mattered more than raw power. The mockery had turned to respect, and a new era of galactic history had begun.